watching Rogers TV.
And did you, when you were first painting together, did you struggle a little bit to find your own voice? Or did you both know what you were about and it kind of...
I think it's been an evolution more than anything, you know. I know for myself, a lot of what I paint is from the imagination.
Okay.
I do paint realistic things as well, but a lot of what I end up making is just kind of out of my head. And so I really like decorative things. I like beautiful color combinations. I like drawing. I've always had this interest in a particular aesthetic, and you know, just if I can make a great painting, it's really it's a great day, you know.
Yeah. And so you both come into the studio every day and you've got kind of a daily practice, and it
very much so, yeah. It's for us, it's very much like a 9 to 5 kind of thing, you know. It feels kind of strange if we don't go into the studio, you know.
So some artists are more intuitive, and so they, even though people talk about you've got to discipline yourself to get involved, but there's some artists who work more intuitively and will come when they feel. So what do you do when you're feeling those blocks and you just don't I don't really want to paint today, or what do you do? How do you deal with that?
That's an interesting question, because I'm going through that right now, and it's just, if you embrace it rather than getting scared of it, because it can be kind of scary when you feel like, what am I going to paint, or I'm not painting well enough. There's ways to kind of break out of that, is by going to galleries or searching the internet, or go to art openings to reinvigorate or re-inspire, to reimagine what it is that you want to paint or convey or express.
And you find that's helpful for you?
Yes, and I just bought a new sketchbook, and for me, my theme through my art career for the last while has been painting whatever inspires me or grabs me. So I start paying more attention again to just the little things that catch my eye, and I'll sketch it or take a picture. From simple things to like our daughter's really well-loved Converse shoes were just thrown on the floor. And the way they were sitting caught my eye and made me think of Van Gogh's painting of shoes, and how it would be funny to do a modern day version of that. Just little things like that I'm trying to just run with and not think too much or worry too much if it, you know, is going to come across the right way, or
And for you, Peter?
I guess I'd say, you know, the big thing for me is that, you know, being inspired takes effort. You have to put effort into being engaged with your art making. So you can coast a little while on the imagination, but you need to recharge your imagination. It's like a well. You need to kind of fill up your mental landscape with ideas and images. So just this morning I was walking the dog, and I was looking at some interesting silver maple trees in Old North here. I set a challenge for myself: find the most interesting silver maple tree and just sort of try and remember it, so that the next time I draw a tree, I can draw upon that sort of memory. But yeah, you have to work at it. You know, it doesn't just come, especially if you're working from the imagination like I do. the imagination only has so much capacity before you need to refill it and recharge it, and kind of, you have to look for the things that inspire you, you know?
But as an artist, in that context, you walk around, you take your dogs for a walk, you go inside. In some senses, you're seeing interest and inspiration everywhere, aren't you? And, and it's almost too much information.
Sometimes,
in terms of, deciding what it is you want to do.
We went to New York last summer, and it was, I just still remember so many interesting vantage points, and looking down into subway tunnels, and just, it was such a strange spatial experience, going up and down into big tall buildings, and being in the streets with almost like in a canyon or something, the big tall buildings. You don't see that around here, so it can sometimes be too much,
Too much information, yeah.
So it's neat.
If you had to give some advice to somebody an artist that was starting out, well, let's start with you, Peter, in this one. So, what would you say?
I think I would say the very first thing is you need to really want to be an artist, and you need to put a lot of work in. It's it won't fall in your lap, but once you do the work, it's very rewarding, and things get so much easier. For me, I believe the big secret of being able to make art that people will engage with is learn how to draw. That's such a fundamental skill. It's almost like learning, the theory of music. If you were a musician, just
learning your arpeggios,
the
chords,
basics, learning how to draw. So yeah.
Interesting. And for you,
a piece of advice. I would definitely say to be kind to yourself, because and to not take other people's advice or comments with a grain of salt, because you're on a journey, and you don't need to find your value as an artist from other people's comments. You need to grow as an artist on your own and believe in yourself. That's one of the biggest things I hear often, is that when people stop making art, it's because they felt like they weren't good enough, or weren't well received. Art is such a journey. It's something that you need to allow ebb and flow of, whether you're feeling really good about it and maybe you're not feeling so good about it. And I think when it comes to being an artist for your life, you need to allow or see the big picture of that, and keep remembering why you love making art, because often when you start out loving making art, it isn't about showing or selling. It's about the process, and in like playing and experimenting and growing that way. And when we remember that we love that in the first place, it helps you gain strength and become an even better artist, because I think really good artists are doing something authentic to themselves, not painting or making art because they think someone's gonna like it or buy it. There's a balance of that. You have to make art that feels right to you and true.
It's in that sense, when you think about bands, musicians when they start,
definitely,
it's a lot of the same thing. You're practicing, you're getting better, and you got to put in the work of
that's right,
going to the clubs or putting out your music on Spotify or YouTube or whatever, and by doing that you get better. But if you expect to sell or expect to have everybody love you, it just gets discouraging. It's the process of doing it, but it's so difficult. Not to sort of travel down that route and think that even after 30 years, I don't know how to paint, or I don't know how to draw. But
we still have days like that.
It's funny because both of us, we frequently say, we're still learning so much every day. Art is like this sort of bottomless well as deep as you dig, there's always some other thing to kind of explore and learn, new color combinations, different ways of depicting things.
And that's not even changing medium, eh?
Exactly.
I think that's why we'll never get bored of it, though at the same time, because you never stop learning.
Yeah.
But I think Corinne is right. You do need to develop your own voice, and every artist kind of has something special that's in their mind that they can show to their audience, and I think the trick is finding what that is. It's mysterious,
And finding what that is and then being able to communicate it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that becomes difficult.
Yeah.
What is success?
As an artist, I think.
How would you define success?
I think initially, it would be the very first thing I think of is just creating something that you're really proud of. If you can make something that, whatever it is, that doesn't have to look, photorealistic or whatever, but making something that you feel like, wow, that's a real accomplishment, that would be just the primary thing, for me.
And for you?
That's a tough question. Success, I think, is an individual definition. And I guess for me, success would be making art that you really love, but also that magic moment when someone comes and can relate to it. And they get it too. And it's such a beautiful experience to have, because you're often putting your art out there. And so when you catch that moment where someone says, oh, I can relate to this, or I understand what this is, or
they love it.
They love it.
It just brings something out.
It's such a great success, and I think that's why I love the studio tour so much, because it often brings out people. Like, you have so many people coming through, and there are going to be a few that look at it and they get it, and they get you, and they understand, like, they see the whole thing, Yeah.
It's funny, I used to think success was getting a piece in the National Gallery.
That would be amazing.
But that's because you take the art classes and you study art history. And you think to become part of that kind of canon. But then the more and more I'm thinking success is whatever that voice is, I find, or just whatever I see in my head, or just being happy with the piece. Because I'm not yet happy with pieces. I'm not quite. I'm still learning in the context of, and I know we're all still learning. Just finding that, as you say, it is a lot more difficult than you think. People think this is an easy life, but it's not. Just to translate what's in your head out there, and it can be quite frustrating. So as you say, be kind to yourself and just enjoy the journey, right? In that sense.
And to that, I often have to remember, when you look at a master painter that you've studied in history, you're looking at the best pieces. You don't see the underbelly of all the ones that didn't make it into the books. You're seeing the only few. Those master painters had that journey too, of falls, of pieces that didn't work out, or periods of time where things, and maybe in hindsight, they went through the journey and they didn't even see that it was that good of work after all too. So,
and it became something more later on if you were able to see
exactly.
For sure. If you had to, so this is an influence kind of question. So if you had to, and I'll start with you, if you had to sit down and have dinner with someone, who would you want to have dinner with?
Oh, wow.
As in, who's helped to influence you to become the artist that you are? Besides Peter.
I have so many. It's hard to nail down But I have from local artists, people that I would love to sit down with, like Catherine Morrissey or Carol Finkbeiner. I would love to sit down with you. I love your work that I've seen. And a lot of the people on the tour, actually. Over the years, though, like Rachel Berman, who's an artist from out west. Erin Hansen, she's a young Californian artist that I really admire.
Oh, that's great. And those, are they contemporary artists, those ones, those two that you mentioned?
Pretty much. Rachel Berman has now passed away, but she was alive, I think, right up until 2010 or so.
Something like that, yeah.
Painter?
Yes.
Both of them are painters?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And for you, Peter?
Oh, I have tons of influences. I really love Japanese printmakers.
Oh, okay.
There's one in particular that I've been really interested in lately. His name is, I'm probably going to butcher this, Kawase Hasui. Hasui, Hasui.
Okay. Yeah.
Just beautiful, beautiful draftsmanship in these wood block prints from Japan.
Yeah.
He was painting between about the 20s and the 1950s. Not painting, making his prints.
Yeah.
But the Group of Seven, I love them.
Yeah.
So
really
many artists. People. Exactly.
Yeah,
so many artists. So many artists.
No, we there's a great cloud of witnesses, as they say, in many ways, that have gone on before, right? And are also involved, even now.
Yeah.
You mentioned when you look for inspiration, you actually go and look at other artists. There's a degree to which I get so inspired and then get so intimidated.
Exactly. The same.
So many artists out there are doing such incredible work.
Yes, it's true.
It's true.
And it's great to be able to. And I'm really learning. It doesn't always. You don't always have to like everything, but to appreciate the process or to appreciate what they're going through is.
I feel the same way. It's kind of dangerous looking at really good art. You get inspired, but you can also get a little discouraged. Why aren't I that good?
You know what always gets me is looking at some of the pieces in the galleries, especially like ones that really strike you. They're pieces that, say Chagall, if I painted something like that, I don't know if I could finish it, like stop there, or some pieces that are so expressive or simple, but they work and they're so inspiring. I find that baffling more than intimidating, just kind of knowing when to stop and feel confident in that loose, expressive aspect of it.
So that's a good question because I struggle with that as well, knowing when to stop. So what do you do when it comes time to stopping? And if you're struggling with stopping, do you just stop? What are some of the, not tools, but strategies you maybe use to help yourself?
I mean, I still struggle with that as well, knowing when to stop. But I often will, when it comes close to being done, I'll take it into the house and hang it somewhere. And usually out of the corner of your eye, or when you pass by, you're like, oh, it needs something else, or oh, it looks done. Or I will often take a photo of it so that when you're pulling up, you're about to look at it, you're looking at it from afar, and it helps you see it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Those are two things that I really like to do. Because some just come so quick, right? And you know right away it's done, and then other times it's like a bit of a battle, a back and forth, and you're fixing things, and sometimes you just end up going too far, and you kind of have to let that go. Too.
Wow. Same with you?
It's pretty similar, yeah. I feel like there's a big intuitive part of painting where you'll have an image sort of, fixed on a canvas or whatever, and you're sort of filling it in and adding, interesting elements. And then you just, at a certain point, you just know it's done. It's good, There's nothing else I want to add that would make it. I can't think of even a brush stroke that would make it better. Yeah. But I do the same as what Corinne does. I'll set it aside in a spot where I can kind of look at it, just quick little glances. I'll walk by it, and then occasionally, I'll be looking at it like, oh, wow, you forgot to paint a whole part of it.
And the two of you both work in oil, which is a whole other issue in terms of the drying time. So sometimes you just have to leave it alone.
That's right, yeah.
So it probably is some built-in versus someone who works in acrylic who can
keep going. That's true, yeah.
But yeah, no, so as you know, one of my mentors is Jamie Jardine. We've been doing a bit of a series, some collaboration series.
That's right,
I'm really good at starting. Okay. I'm really good at just jumping in and going, but I'm not very good at finishing. And Jamie consistently says, "Stop, Jane, step back." Yes, he constantly reminding me to step back because I get into a thing, and also I'm trying to make every part of the painting perfect, and life isn't like that. It's more what's the most important part. Nothing else matters. What's the point? He's constantly, and I still mess it up, and I still can't do it. But I hear the struggle. So
that's right.
Same thing. I put it away. I come back to it and go, "Oh, did I do that? That looks really good."
Yeah, exactly. Oftentimes, just kind of changes your mind. You look back. Oh, wow, that was pretty good.
It's a good life lesson, isn't it? It's a good life lesson, whether you're dealing with kids or some of those things. Sometimes you just gotta come back to it. So, this has been a real treat and a real pleasure, actually, getting to know both of you a little bit more.
Yes.
Is there any other questions I should ask that you'd like me to ask?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. Can you think of anything?
Yeah, I can't think of anything.
I don't know. Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, no, that's good. No, this is about getting to know the two of you a little bit more. This is about getting into the artist studio as well. And so, no, thank you. Thank you for letting us into your studio. Thank you for letting us into your lives and the process of doing that.
Thanks, Jane.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for coming. Yeah.
Thanks for the chance.
Yeah.
All right, so here it is. It's the end of the day on Sunday. The artist tour is over. Here's Jane. Here's all of her helpers. So, Jane, what's the feeling like for you now? It's at the end.
I'm a little tired, but it went really, really well. People were so encouraging. People were incredible. I'm really glad to see that the public is coming out, just sort of visiting. So I think that's really encouraging for the artists, that the people are just interested to come and see.
So can I give you my impression?
Okay.
I remember when you first met with Rogers TV about the paint box show.
Yep.
Trying to convince some folks that there really was an artistic community in London. They're very spread out, but there's a real interest in art in London, right? And but you have to go with that show to all of those different studios, right, to help people to see that. But I think Rogers has learned that you were right. There is this broad artistic community, but what the studio tour does is it brings them all into just a few locations, 22 locations or something around the city, and then you get a chance to see that artistic community emerge, right? And they come and they go to just a few places, but you suddenly get to see them. And I saw that here. Like, I met people here that are doing all sorts of interesting things about art, not just creating it, but also purchasing it or placing it in certain places or whatever. And there's just a huge amount of people that are doing that. And that really I find very encouraging, and I think it confirmed what your thoughts were. And I think for places like Rogers and others, it's very much that, yes, there's a thriving arts and culture center here in London. We just have to maybe do a better job of selling it and helping people to know that that's a big part of our footprint and our fingerprint as a community.
Yeah, I mean, I loved meeting other artists that were still learning, or still, I met a lot of artists that were struggling with blocks or wanting to get back to it. I think that was great.
Yeah.
I do think, there's whether you can afford art or not doesn't matter, but you can appreciate it. So there are people coming around just to visit and see the work, and I think that was wonderful. And then, of course, the young people, like some of the students or the kids, just having them go through the sketchbook. So even though here I've got the finished work, to me, the studio tour is all about the studio, and it's all about the process. So I loved watching people flip through my sketchbooks. And I write a lot of notes, but some of the drawings are crappy, some of them are good, but it didn't matter. It's just all part of the process. And it was just great meeting all of the folks. I think I was a little intimidated because I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but I think just people were so encouraging, and it was great.
I love the galleries, and I love going in and looking at those things. But here I am trying to interview you. There's a chainsaw going in the background. There's the kids playing basketball next door, right? Yep. Here's art right in the center of community, right out here where community is at. And I think there's something very refreshing about that art is central to the pedestrian kind of traffic of London and how London lives and moves. Yeah. And I think that's been kind of neat. I mean, you set up the greenhouse because that's what you wanted. Yep. And we kind of wondered about it. And then 3 days before this thing started, that storm came, whipped everything out. So we had to rush, put it all back together. But when you look at it, here it is. It's out here in a driveway in like a temporary shelter. And there's all this beautiful art that's been creative and collaborated on. And people came. And they want to see it. So the thing that draws people is the art. So what was the highlight then?
I think the process of the studio.
Yeah.
Like, I think that was the most important part to me. So, hey, you want to come and see it?
Yep, I do.
Yeah, so it made me clean the studio. This was a mess until Thursday.
Yeah.
But, you know, the process of learning, like, even though I don't really like doing still lifes, you know, things like bananas and things, just having them here in terms of some of the sketches and some of the sketches I did for landscapes before was important. Like, there's a whole process about intentional practice where you can see. So this is an exercise Jamie gave me where
Jamie Jardine.
He made me draw an apple, and it wasn't very good. Gave me a few hints. I painted another apple, and this is an oil. And I finally, you know, over the course of a couple of weeks, but in those hints, I all of a sudden painted an apple that was worthy.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot from that process. So I think the practice in the sketchbooks that are here, watching people flip through my sketchbooks, seeing my notes, seeing again some drawings that weren't great. I think this to me was what it was really all about.
That's great, Jane.
Yeah, in terms of the sketchbooks.
Can I ask you, how did people react to these?
They actually
These are huge. Well, how tall are they? 5 feet or 6 feet?
They're 6 feet. They're 3 feet by 6 feet. So this one is finished. This is going to go back to Westland. And this is in the middle of the process, and they thought that it was great, and obviously
they're
it's
so big.
Explaining the process. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And obviously this one in particular, the beginning of the paint box, I'm actually painting this one. So this now is the finished.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So what's great about the studio is there's some studios that are bigger, there's some studios that are smaller, but for me this is kind of a perfect place and a perfect size because I can get messy.
So now what, Jane? The art studio tour is done. You've got more segments of the paint box to do before the summer is over. What else? Anything else you got to work on?
You know, there are some. There's some promises I've made, so I would really like to make sure those get finished. Taking a bit of a break, so we're doing a lot of work before we go. And I think, you know, during the summer, to me, is just about playing, and so I'll just continue to kind of keep playing and kind of go from there.
Well, you know, I'm your husband, so I get to see you going in.
Actually, you want me to come back and see more time?
No. What I'm saying is it's interesting seeing you. I see you down at the food bank. All these volunteers come down. You're helping to pull them all together and move them out into different aspects of the community to help to put together food security. But then I see you here and all these people coming to you about painting, not at all about the food bank or anything. And it was wonderful to watch you in the middle of all these hundreds of people just talking about art and to seeing how much you loved it and how much they loved it and how intrigued they were, not just by yours, but by everybody's, every aspect of it. It's art's alive and well in London. That's what I've really come away from all this, from seeing all these people, and it's really there. And I was glad you were in the center of it. It was great.
Yeah.